I'm Caroline Mitchell, and I've spent the last 8 years building a life my family never believed I could have. At 34 years old, sitting at my sister's perfectly decorated Christmas table, watching her smirk as she delivered the cruelest line I'd ever heard, I realized that some people never change. At least my kids have a real father, she said, her voice dripping with that particular brand of superiority only siblings can perfect. The words hung in the air like poison, and everyone at the table went silent. My daughter Emma, only 7 years old, looked up at me with confusion in her eyes, and my son Lucas, just 5, stopped playing with his toy car. What my sister Victoria didn't know, what none of them knew, was that my lawyer was walking up the driveway at that very moment, carrying documents that would shatter her perfect little world. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Growing up as the younger sister to Victoria was like living in a shadow that never moved. She was 3 years older, which meant she got everything first. The new clothes, the driving lessons, the college applications, the parental attention. By the time anything trickled down to me, it felt like leftovers. Victoria was the golden child who could do no wrong. She married her high school sweetheart, Marcus, when she was 22, right after graduating from State College with a degree in elementary education. Their wedding was the event of the season in our small town of Millbrook, Connecticut. My parents spent nearly $40,000 on that celebration, hiring the best caterers, booking the historic mansion on the hill, inviting 300 guests. It was everything a girl could dream of, or so everyone told me. 2 years later, Victoria and Marcus had their first child, a son they named Connor. Then came their daughter Lily, just 18 months after that. My mother practically moved into their house for the first few months of each birth, cooking meals, doing laundry, providing childcare. My father helped Marcus with the down payment on their 4-bedroom colonial in the good school district. Everything Victoria needed just appeared, like magic, because that's what families do for their firstborn, their success story, their pride and joy. Then there was me. I met Daniel when I was 23, working as a paralegal at a downtown law firm. He was a graphic designer, creative and passionate, with dreams of starting his own agency. We fell in love fast, the kind of whirlwind romance that makes you forget to ask practical questions. When I got pregnant 6 months into our relationship, I was terrified to tell my family. We weren't married. We didn't own a house. Daniel's freelance income was unpredictable. I knew exactly what they would say, and I was right. My mother cried for 2 days when I told her. My father barely spoke to me for a week. Victoria took it upon herself to lecture me about responsibility, about setting a good example, about how I was throwing my life away. "This isn't how you do things, Caroline," she said, sitting in my tiny apartment with her arms crossed. "You get married first. You establish stability. You plan for children. You don't just let life happen to you." Her words stung because part of me worried she was right. Daniel and I did get married, a small ceremony at City Hall with 2 witnesses and no family present. My parents refused to attend because they said they couldn't celebrate what they considered a mistake. Victoria sent a card with a grocery store gift certificate inside. Emma was born on a rainy Tuesday in April, and she was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and the brightest eyes I'd ever seen. Daniel and I were exhausted and broke, but we were happy. We managed in our cramped apartment, taking turns with night feedings, surviving on love and determination. My family visited exactly once in the first 3 months. Victoria brought a bag of hand-me-down baby clothes from Connor and spent the entire visit pointing out everything we were doing wrong. The crib wasn't positioned correctly. We were holding Emma too much and would spoil her. Our apartment wasn't child-proofed enough. My mother nodded along with every criticism, adding her own commentary about how different things had been when Victoria had Connor. When Emma was 18 months old, I got pregnant again. Lucas arrived just before Emma's 2nd birthday, and suddenly we had 2 children under 2 in a 1-bedroom apartment. Daniel was working 16-hour days trying to build his client base while I had taken a position as a legal assistant that allowed me to work from home part-time. Money was impossibly tight. We shopped at discount stores, clipped coupons religiously, and celebrated birthdays with homemade cakes. Meanwhile, Victoria's family seemed to grow more prosperous every year. Marcus got promoted to regional manager at his company. They renovated their kitchen with granite countertops and custom cabinets. They took the kids to Disney World and posted hundreds of photos on social media. Every family gathering became an exercise in comparison. Victoria would talk about Connor's private soccer league while I helped Emma with her library book. She would show off Lily's dance recital costume while I tried to keep Lucas entertained with crayons and paper. My mother would sigh and say things like, "Well, some people are just better at planning their lives," or, "It's wonderful when you can give your children opportunities." The implications were always clear. Victoria was succeeding at motherhood and life. I was struggling, barely keeping my head above water, a cautionary tale about what happens when you don't follow the proper order of things. The worst part wasn't the financial comparison or even the subtle digs. It was the way they treated my children differently from Victoria's children. When Connor turned 6, my parents bought him a motorized toy car that cost more than our monthly grocery budget. When Emma turned 6, she received a used board game. For Christmas, Lily would get American Girl dolls with entire wardrobes while Emma got dollar store princess figurines. Lucas never received gifts that matched the value or thoughtfulness of what Connor got. My kids were too young to fully understand the disparity, but I saw it. I felt it. And I hated that my family made them feel less than simply because their parents weren't living up to some arbitrary standard of success. Daniel noticed it too. "Why do we keep going to these gatherings?" he asked after one particularly painful Thanksgiving where Victoria had loudly discussed their upcoming cruise while we sat quietly, knowing we couldn't afford a weekend camping trip. "They don't respect us. They certainly don't respect our kids." I didn't have a good answer except that they were my family, and I kept hoping things would change. I kept hoping that one day they would see how hard we were working, how much we loved our children, how happy we were despite our modest circumstances. Then everything changed, though not in the way I expected. When Lucas was 3 years old, Daniel started complaining about headaches. Terrible, debilitating headaches that no amount of over-the-counter medication could touch. For weeks, he pushed through them, unable to afford the time off work or the cost of a doctor's visit. Finally, when he collapsed at his computer one evening, I called an ambulance. The emergency room visit led to imaging, which led to more tests, which led to a diagnosis that shattered our world. Daniel had a brain tumor. Aggressive, inoperable, and given his symptoms, likely spreading. The oncologist gave us options, none of them good. Radiation might slow the progression. Chemotherapy might buy some time. We would need to prepare for the worst. I remember sitting in that sterile office, holding Daniel's hand, thinking about our children playing with a neighbor at home, completely unaware that their world was about to implode. Daniel and I had always planned to grow old together, to watch Emma and Lucas graduate and get married and have children of their own. Now we were talking about months, maybe a year if we were lucky. I called my mother from the hospital parking lot, sobbing so hard I could barely speak. I told her about the diagnosis, about the prognosis, about how terrified I was. I needed my family. I needed support. What I got was a moment of silence followed by, "Well, this is just terrible timing with the holidays coming up. I'll tell your father and Victoria." That was it. No offer to help, no words of comfort, just concern about how Daniel's terminal illness might inconvenience their holiday plans. The next few months were a blur of medical appointments, insurance battles, and trying to keep life normal for Emma and Lucas. Daniel deteriorated quickly. The tumor affected his motor skills, his speech, his memory. I watched the man I loved disappear piece by piece. I worked from home when I could, arranging childcare through a patchwork of neighbors and a part-time babysitter we could barely afford. The medical bills piled up despite insurance. Experimental treatments, medications, home care equipment, nothing was cheap and everything was necessary. My family visited twice during those 6 months. Victoria came once, stayed for 20 minutes, and spent most of that time on her phone. She didn't bring food or offer to help with the kids or even ask if we needed anything. She just sat uncomfortably in our living room, clearly eager to leave. My parents came for an awkward afternoon, bringing a casserole and staying long enough to confirm that yes, Daniel really was dying, and yes, it was as depressing as they'd imagined. My mother hugged me at the door and said, "You're being very strong," in the same tone she might use to compliment someone's haircut. Daniel died on a Tuesday morning in early spring, just 13 months after his diagnosis. Emma was 6 and Lucas was 4. They were too young to fully comprehend death, but old enough to know their father was gone. The funeral was small. Daniel's family came from California, his colleagues from various jobs, a few of our neighbors, and his college friends. My parents attended but left immediately after the service. Victoria didn't come at all. She texted me the morning of the funeral saying that Connor had a soccer tournament she couldn't miss. A soccer tournament for a 9-year-old took priority over her sister's husband's funeral. In the weeks and months that followed Daniel's death, I discovered reserves of strength I didn't know I possessed. I had 2 small children who needed stability and love. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I had mountains of medical debt despite insurance coverage. I had a part-time job that wasn't enough to support us. I couldn't afford to fall apart, so I didn't. I cried late at night after Emma and Lucas were asleep. I went through Daniel's things slowly, keeping what mattered, donating what didn't. I applied for better positions, sending out dozens of resumes each week. 3 months after Daniel died, I got a call from a former colleague, Patricia, who had left the law firm to start her own practice. She was looking for an office manager who could also handle paralegal work. The position paid significantly more than what I'd been making, included health insurance, and offered flexible hours for single parents. It felt like a lifeline thrown to a drowning person. I accepted immediately. Patricia had lost her own husband years earlier and understood what I was going through in a way most people couldn't. She became not just my employer but my mentor and eventually my friend. Working for Patricia changed everything. I threw myself into the work, grateful for the distraction and the purpose. I learned more about law in those first 6 months than I had in years at the previous firm. Patricia specialized in family law, particularly divorce cases, and I discovered I had a talent for the detailed work involved. I was organized, thorough, and I genuinely cared about the clients. Many of them were women in difficult situations, fighting for custody or fair settlements, and helping them felt meaningful. Patricia noticed my aptitude and encouraged me to go to law school. "You're already doing half the work of an associate," she told me one afternoon. "You should get the credentials and the salary to match." The idea seemed impossible at first. I had 2 young children, a full-time job, and massive debt. How could I possibly add law school to that chaos? But Patricia helped me research programs, find scholarships, and create a feasible plan. She even offered to adjust my work schedule to accommodate classes. I started law school part-time when Emma was 8 and Lucas was 6. It was grueling. I worked 40 hours a week, attended classes 3 evenings a week and Saturdays, studied late into the night, and still had to be a mother to 2 children who needed me. There were nights when I fell asleep over my casebooks, mornings when I got 3 hours of sleep, weekends when I wanted to quit. But I kept going because this was our future. This was how I would build a better life for Emma and Lucas. This was how I would prove to everyone, including myself, that I was more than just the screw-up younger sister. During those years of law school, my family's distance became even more pronounced. They never asked about my classes or how I was managing. Victoria continued to talk endlessly about her children's achievements and her husband's promotions and their family vacations. My mother would occasionally ask if I was still doing that school thing, in a tone that suggested it was a peculiar hobby rather than a serious commitment. My father never mentioned it at all. Family gatherings became performances where I had to watch Victoria's children receive extravagant gifts while Emma and Lucas got token presents. I had to listen to stories about expensive summer camps and ski trips while I calculated whether I could afford new winter coats for my kids. I had to smile through commentary about how well Victoria was doing while the implication hung unsaid that I was barely surviving. The only reason I continued attending was for Emma and Lucas. Despite everything, they loved seeing their grandparents and cousins. I wouldn't let my family's treatment of me deprive my children of those relationships. What none of them knew, what I deliberately kept hidden, was that I was succeeding. I was at the top of my law school class. I had received multiple academic awards. I had been offered a position at a prestigious firm starting immediately after I passed the bar. Patricia had been preparing me to eventually become a partner in her growing practice. The life I was building was nothing like what my family assumed. They saw a struggling single mother barely keeping it together. They didn't see the woman who had survived the unimaginable and was now thriving. I graduated law school at 33, passed the bar on my first attempt, and started working full-time at Patricia's firm, which had expanded to include 3 other attorneys. My salary tripled overnight. Finally, after years of scraping by, I could breathe. I could afford decent clothes for the kids, could say yes to the occasional treat, could start paying down the massive pile of debt. More importantly, I was building expertise in family law. I was becoming known for my thorough preparation and my dedication to clients. Other attorneys started referring cases to me. Throughout this transformation, I maintained my distance from my family emotionally while still showing up for obligatory gatherings. I didn't share my successes because experience had taught me they wouldn't celebrate them. When I graduated law school, I invited them to the ceremony. My parents came but left early, saying they had another commitment. Victoria didn't attend at all. When I passed the bar, my mother's response was, "Well, that's nice, dear." Victoria just found out Connor was accepted into the gifted program at school. Every milestone I achieved was either ignored or immediately overshadowed by something happening in Victoria's picture-perfect life. But I had learned something valuable during those difficult years. I had learned that my worth wasn't determined by my family's recognition. I had learned that I could survive and even thrive without their approval. Most importantly, I had learned to trust my own judgment about what mattered in life. Emma and Lucas were happy, healthy kids who knew they were loved. I had a career I found meaningful. We had a comfortable home in a good neighborhood. We had close friends who felt more like family than my actual family did. I didn't need Victoria's validation or my parents' praise. I had built something real and lasting on my own terms. Which brings us to this particular Christmas, 8 years after Daniel's death, 2 years after passing the bar, and 1 year into a case that would change everything. Victoria had insisted on hosting Christmas dinner at her house this year. It was her turn, she said, and besides, their house was bigger and better suited for entertaining. The implication being that my home, a modest 3-bedroom in a nice but not prestigious neighborhood, wasn't adequate for a proper Lawrence family Christmas. I arrived at Victoria's house with Emma and Lucas, both of them excited to see their cousins and grandparents. Emma was now 14, tall and thoughtful, already talking about wanting to become a teacher. Lucas was 12, funny and kind-hearted, passionate about building things and solving problems. They were good kids, growing into remarkable teenagers despite all the challenges life had thrown at them. I was intensely proud of both of them, even if my family never seemed to notice how special they were. Victoria's house was decorated like something out of a magazine. Fresh garlands on every surface, a massive tree with coordinated ornaments, elaborate table settings with cloth napkins and silver chargers. She had hired someone to do the decorations, she mentioned immediately, because she was just so busy with the kids' activities and Marcus's work events. My mother oohed and awed over everything while my father nodded approvingly. This was the kind of display they appreciated, visible proof of success and prosperity. Dinner was catered, another detail Victoria made sure everyone knew about. As we sat around her extended dining table, the conversation followed familiar patterns. Connor, now 15, was being recruited by elite high school sports programs. Lily, 13, had been selected for an advanced music program. Marcus had received another promotion. Victoria had been elected to the school board. Each accomplishment was celebrated with enthusiastic praise from my parents. When my mother finally asked how Emma and Lucas were doing, I mentioned that Emma had been accepted into a competitive STEM program at her high school and that Lucas had won a regional science fair. My mother smiled vaguely and said, "That's nice," before turning back to Victoria to ask more questions about Lily's music achievements. It was such a small thing, but it represented years of this same dynamic. My children's accomplishments were footnotes. Victoria's children's achievements were headlines. Then came the gift exchange, and I watched the familiar scene unfold once again. Connor received expensive noise-canceling headphones and a new gaming system. Lily got a professional quality keyboard and music lessons for the next year. Emma received a generic teen girl gift basket that had clearly been purchased last minute. Lucas got a science kit that was designed for children several years younger than him. The disparity was so obvious that even Victoria's kids looked uncomfortable. I helped Emma and Lucas thank their grandparents graciously, as I always did, teaching them to be kind even when others weren't. But inside, I was done. I was so incredibly done with this performance, with the constant message that my children were less than, with the years of accumulated slights and dismissals. I had kept quiet for so long, trying to maintain family peace, but watching my children open those thoughtless gifts while their cousins received carefully chosen expensive presents felt like the final straw. Victoria must have sensed my mood shift because she chose that moment to strike. We were in the kitchen, the adults cleaning up after the meal while the kids played in the basement. Victoria was holding court as usual, talking about their upcoming ski vacation to Aspen. My mother was asking questions about the resort. My father was pouring himself another scotch. I was quietly loading the dishwasher, trying to expedite the process so Emma, Lucas, and I could leave. "You know, Caroline," Victoria said, her voice taking on that particular tone I'd learned to recognize over the years, the one that meant something cutting was coming. I was thinking about how different our lives have turned out. I mean, Marcus and I just celebrated our 15th anniversary. The kids are thriving. Everything we planned for has worked out exactly right. I continued loading dishes, not taking the bait. But Victoria wasn't done. She moved closer, and I could see that slight smile on her face, the one she wore when she was about to deliver a blow disguised as observation. I look at my children, and I see Marcus in them. That's stability, that's solid foundation. They'll never have to wonder about their place in the world because they come from an intact family. She paused, letting the words hang there. It must be hard for you, raising kids alone. No matter how much you try to make up for it, there's just something missing when there's no father figure. The kitchen had gone silent. My mother was frozen mid-motion, a serving platter in her hands. My father had stopped pouring his drink. I carefully placed the plate I was holding into the dishwasher and turned to face my sister directly. Before I could respond, Victoria delivered the killing blow. Her voice was light, almost casual, as if she were commenting on the weather. "I mean, at least my kids have a real father." The words landed like a physical blow. At least my kids have a real father. The implication was clear and cruel. Daniel had been dead for 8 years, but somehow that made him less real, less valid, less worthy of being called a father. My children's father, who had loved them desperately in the short time he had with them, was being erased by my sister's casual cruelty. Emma and Lucas, who had lost so much already, were being told their family was somehow deficient, incomplete, less than. I felt the familiar heat of humiliation rising in my chest, that old instinct to shrink, to apologize for taking up space, to make myself smaller so Victoria could feel bigger. For 34 years, I had played this role. The disappointing younger sister, the one who made poor choices, the cautionary tale. I had absorbed their judgments and criticisms, had internalized the message that I was somehow failing at life while Victoria succeeded. Even as I built my career and raised my children and survived impossible circumstances, part of me still believed their narrative about who I was. But something was different this time. Maybe it was the years of therapy I'd started after Daniel's death. Maybe it was the confidence I'd built through law school and my career. Maybe it was simply that I had finally reached my limit. Whatever the reason, instead of shrinking, I felt myself expand. I felt clarity cut through the fog of old pain and family dynamics. I saw Victoria clearly for perhaps the first time, not as the intimidating older sister but as a deeply insecure woman who needed to diminish others to feel superior. I opened my mouth to respond, to finally tell Victoria exactly what I thought of her and her perfect life and her casual cruelty toward my children. But before I could speak, the doorbell rang. The sound cut through the tense silence in the kitchen like a knife. Victoria looked annoyed at the interruption. My mother glanced toward the front door with confusion. My father checked his watch as if expecting someone. "I'll get it," I said quietly, walking out of the kitchen with deliberate calm. My hands were shaking but my voice was steady. I knew exactly who was at the door because I had orchestrated this moment with careful precision. Everything that had happened in the past year, all the late nights and careful planning and strategic decisions, had led to this exact moment. I opened the front door to find James Thornton standing on Victoria's pristine porch, his leather briefcase in hand, his expression professionally neutral. James was a partner at one of the most respected family law firms in the state, known for handling high-profile divorces. He was also someone I'd worked with extensively over the past year on a case that had consumed hundreds of hours of my professional life. "Ms. Mitchell," he said with a slight nod. "I apologize for the interruption on Christmas. Are Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence here?" "They are," I replied, stepping aside to let him enter. "Please come in." Victoria appeared in the hallway, her expression shifting from annoyance to confusion as she saw the well-dressed stranger in her foyer. "Caroline, who is this? We're in the middle of family time." "This is James Thornton," I said calmly. "He's an attorney. He has some documents for you and Marcus." The color drained from Victoria's face. In that instant, she understood something was terribly wrong. My mother and father had followed her into the hallway, along with Marcus, who had come up from the basement where he'd been supervising the children. Marcus looked between James, me, and Victoria with growing alarm. "Documents? What documents?" Victoria's voice had risen an octave. "What is this about?" James reached into his briefcase and extracted 2 thick manila envelopes. "Mrs. Victoria Lawrence, I'm here to serve you with divorce papers filed by your husband, Marcus Lawrence. Mr. Marcus Lawrence, I'm also serving you with these documents." He handed each of them an envelope with professional efficiency. The hallway erupted. Victoria's hands shook as she stared at the envelope. Marcus had gone pale, his jaw clenched. My mother gasped and reached out to steady herself against the wall. My father's face turned an alarming shade of red. "Divorce papers?" Victoria's voice was shrill now. "Marcus, what is he talking about? This is insane. Tell them this is a mistake." Marcus didn't respond. He was staring at the envelope in his hands as if it contained a bomb. His silence was answer enough. "There's no mistake," James said calmly. "Mr. Lawrence filed for divorce 6 weeks ago. Mrs. Lawrence, you're being served today because multiple attempts to serve you at other locations were unsuccessful. The initial hearing is scheduled for January 15th. All the details are in the documents." 6 weeks ago? Victoria turned to Marcus, her perfect composure cracking. "You filed for divorce 6 weeks ago and didn't tell me? This is Christmas. Our children are downstairs. This can't be happening." "I think we should discuss this privately," Marcus said quietly, the first words he'd spoken since James arrived. "Privately?" Victoria's laugh was bitter and sharp. "There's a stranger in our house serving us divorce papers in front of my entire family and you want to discuss this privately?" My mother had tears streaming down her face. "This must be a misunderstanding. Marcus, you two are the perfect couple. Tell everyone this is a mistake." But Marcus wasn't looking at my mother or Victoria. He was looking at me, and in his eyes, I saw resignation and something that might have been gratitude. He knew. Of course he knew. I had been working on his case for nearly a year. Victoria followed his gaze, and understanding dawned on her face like a sunrise. "Caroline. You knew about this. That's why you're not surprised. That's why you're so calm." Her voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "What did you do?" "I did my job," I replied evenly. "Marcus came to me 11 months ago. He hired me to represent him in his divorce from you. Everything in those documents is the result of extensive legal work and documentation. You? Victoria looked like I'd slapped her. You're representing Marcus against me? Your own sister? I'm representing a client who came to me for legal help, I corrected. The fact that he happens to be married to you is incidental to my professional obligation to provide competent representation. Professional obligation? Victoria's voice was climbing again. This is betrayal. This is family. You're supposed to be on my side. The way you've been on my side? I asked quietly. The way you were on my side when Daniel was dying? The way you've been on my side every time you've diminished my children? The way you were on my side about 20 minutes ago when you told me my kids don't have a real father? My father found his voice. Caroline, this is completely inappropriate. Whatever is happening between Victoria and Marcus is their business. You've overstepped. Actually, Dad, this is exactly my business. This is what I do. I'm a divorce attorney. Marcus needed representation, and I provided it. The fact that it makes you uncomfortable doesn't make it wrong. James cleared his throat. I've completed the service. The documents contain all relevant information about proceedings, deadlines, and the initial hearing date. I'll see myself out. He nodded professionally and left, leaving chaos in his wake. Victoria was crying now, ugly tears that smeared her perfect makeup. Marcus, tell them this isn't real. Tell them we're fine. We're happy. We're not happy, Victoria, Marcus said wearily. We haven't been happy for years. You know that. That's not true. We have a beautiful life. We have everything. You have everything, Marcus corrected. You have the house you wanted, the cars you wanted, the lifestyle you wanted. I've just been funding it while feeling increasingly invisible in my own marriage. My mother was clutching at straws. Every marriage has rough patches. You don't just give up. You work through it. Think of the children. I have thought of the children, Marcus said. Connor and Lily deserve to see what a healthy relationship looks like. What they have now is two parents who barely speak to each other except to coordinate schedules and maintain appearances. Victoria turned back to me, and her expression had shifted from shock to fury. You did this. You poisoned him against me. You're jealous because I have what you lost. You can't stand that I'm happy and successful, so you had to destroy my marriage. I didn't destroy your marriage, Victoria. You did that yourself. Marcus came to me because he was drowning in a relationship where nothing he did was ever enough. Where every decision had to meet your approval. Where his feelings and needs were constantly dismissed. That's a lie, Victoria spat. He's lying to you. We're happy. Ask anyone. Ask Mom and Dad. They'll tell you. We tell everyone we're happy, Marcus said quietly. That's not the same as actually being happy. We put on a performance for your parents, for our friends, for social media. But when it's just us, Victoria, we're strangers. When was the last time we had a conversation that wasn't about the kids' schedules or house renovations or what we needed to buy next? That's what marriage is, Victoria protested. That's being adults with responsibilities. No, Marcus said firmly. That's being roommates who happen to raise children together. I want more than that. I deserve more than that. My father was trying to regain control of the situation. This is absurd. Marcus, you're making a mistake. You have a good life. Do you know how many men would want what you have? Then they can have it, Marcus said. I'm done. Victoria was spiraling now, her perfect facade completely shattered. The kids. What are we going to tell Connor and Lily? They're going to be devastated. We'll tell them the truth, Marcus said. That sometimes adults realize they're not right for each other anymore. That we both love them and that won't change. That this isn't their fault. This is your fault, Victoria pointed at me accusingly. This is all your fault. You couldn't stand that I was happy. You've always been jealous of me. Ever since we were kids, you've wanted what I have. I don't want what you have, Victoria, I said calmly. I never did. I wanted you to see me. I wanted you to respect me. I wanted you to treat my children with the same love and care you give your own. But I stopped waiting for that to happen. I built my own life, and it's a good one. A good life? Victoria laughed bitterly. You're a divorced single mother working at some boutique law firm. You live in a starter home in a mediocre neighborhood. Your kids wear last season's clothes and have never been on a real vacation. That's not a good life. That's settling. I'm not divorced, I corrected quietly. I'm a widow. There's a difference. Daniel died loving me and our children. He didn't choose to leave. And yes, I work at a boutique firm where I'm valued and respected and making a real difference in people's lives. My home might not be a showplace, but it's filled with love. My kids might not have everything Connor and Lily have, but they know they're loved unconditionally. I'd call that a very good life. My mother was still crying. How could you do this, Caroline? How could you help destroy your sister's marriage? I didn't destroy anything that wasn't already broken, I replied. Marcus came to me because he needed help. Because he was miserable and saw no way out. I gave him legal counsel and support. That's what attorneys do. But she's your sister, my mother wailed. And she's the sister who skipped my husband's funeral for a soccer game, I said, my voice harder now. She's the sister who never once asked how I was managing after Daniel died. Who never offered to help with Emma and Lucas. Who has spent years making sure everyone knows her life is better than mine. Who just told me, in your presence, that my children don't have a real father. My mother flinched. She didn't mean it that way. She meant it exactly that way. And you all heard her say it. None of you defended me or my children. You never do. Because in this family, Victoria is always right and I'm always the screw-up, no matter what I accomplish or how hard I work or what I survive. Victoria's tears had stopped. In their place was cold rage. You're really going to stand there and play the victim? After what you've just done? I'm not playing anything, I said. I'm stating facts. You want to know what's in those divorce papers? Let me summarize. Marcus is filing for divorce on grounds of irreconcilable differences. He's seeking joint custody of Connor and Lily with equal parenting time. He's proposing a fair division of assets. He's offering to maintain the house payments for 6 months while you figure out your next steps. He's being remarkably generous considering the circumstances. Considering what circumstances? Victoria demanded. What lies has he told you? Marcus spoke up. No lies, Victoria. Just the truth. The truth about how you've belittled me for years. How nothing I do is ever good enough. How you criticize me in front of the kids. How you make major decisions without consulting me and then get angry when I object. How you've prioritized appearances over actual connection. That's not fair, Victoria protested. It's completely fair, Marcus countered. Last month, you bought a new car without even mentioning it to me. A $40,000 car. When I asked why you didn't discuss such a major purchase, you told me I was being controlling and that you deserved nice things. You make plenty of money. We could afford it. That's not the point. The point is we're supposed to be partners. But you don't treat me like a partner. You treat me like an ATM and a sperm donor. My mother looked horrified. Marcus, please. Not in front of everyone. Why not? Marcus asked. Everyone here has contributed to the problem. You've all spent years putting Victoria on a pedestal while treating Caroline like an afterthought. You've modeled this exact dynamic, where one person gets everything and the other gets scraps. Maybe it's time everyone heard the truth. My father was still trying to maintain authority. This is inappropriate. Caroline, I think you should leave. You've caused enough damage for one evening. I'll leave, I agreed. But first, let me make something very clear. I'm good at what I do. Very good. I've spent the past year documenting every instance of Victoria's financial decisions made without Marcus's input. Every time she's belittled him in front of witnesses. Every text message and email that shows the pattern of dismissiveness and control. Marcus has been keeping records at my suggestion, and we have an airtight case. Victoria's face went white. You've been spying on me? Not spying. Documenting. There's a difference. Everything we have is either public record or information Marcus provided as my client. But it paints a very clear picture of a marriage where one person holds all the power and the other person is just supposed to go along with it. This is blackmail, Victoria hissed. It's preparation, I corrected. And here's what's going to happen. You can accept the terms Marcus has offered, which are more than fair. Joint custody, equitable asset division, reasonable support arrangements. Or you can fight it, and I will make sure every detail of your marriage becomes part of the public record. Every unnecessary purchase. Every dismissive comment. Every way you've prioritized your wants over your family's needs. You can't do that, Victoria said, but her voice lacked conviction. I can and I will. It's my job. Marcus deserves a fair settlement, and I'm going to make sure he gets it. You can make this easy or you can make this hard, but either way, this marriage is over. My mother looked between us desperately. Caroline, please. Think about the family. Think about what this will do to us all. I've spent my entire life thinking about this family, I said. I've absorbed your criticisms and your dismissals. I've watched you treat my children as less than. I've shown up to every gathering even when I knew I'd be made to feel small. But I'm done. I'm done pretending that your treatment of me is acceptable. I'm done making myself smaller so Victoria can feel bigger. So this is revenge? My father asked coldly. You're using your position to get back at your sister? This isn't revenge. This is me doing my job well. Marcus needed help, and I provided it. The fact that it benefits me emotionally to see Victoria face consequences for her behavior is just a bonus. Victoria found her voice again. You're going to regret this. I'll find my own attorney. I'll fight this. I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. Please do, I said calmly. Find the best attorney you can afford. Fight as hard as you want. But know that I've been preparing for this for almost a year. I know every asset, every account, every purchase. I know the law inside and out. And most importantly, I know you. I know exactly how you'll react and what arguments you'll make. I've already prepared counters for all of it. Marcus looked at Victoria with something that might have been pity. It didn't have to be this way. I tried to talk to you so many times about how unhappy I was. But you wouldn't listen. You never listen. That's not true, Victoria said weakly. It is true. And now we're here. I'm sorry it happened like this, on Christmas, in front of your family. But Caroline was right when she suggested this approach. You're not going to handle this well no matter when or how it happens. At least this way, everyone sees the reality instead of the performance we've been putting on. I walked to the closet and retrieved Emma's and Lucas's coats. I'm going to get my kids and leave. Emma, Lucas, I called down the basement stairs. Time to go. They came up reluctantly, confused by the tension they could feel even if they didn't understand its source. Connor and Lily followed them up, looking worried. All 4 children could sense something was terribly wrong. What's happening? Emma asked quietly, always perceptive. We're leaving, I said simply. Say goodbye to everyone. Emma and Lucas said polite goodbyes, hugging their grandparents and cousins. Connor looked like he wanted to say something but didn't know what. Lily was crying softly, picking up on her mother's distress without understanding it. As I ushered Emma and Lucas toward the door, Victoria called after me. This isn't over, Caroline. You can't just destroy my life and walk away. I turned back to face her one last time. I didn't destroy your life, Victoria. I just stopped letting you destroy mine. There's a difference. We left Victoria's perfect house with its perfect decorations and its perfect facade. As I buckled Emma and Lucas into the car, Emma looked at me with concern. "Mom, what happened in there?" Everyone seemed really upset. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "Uncle Marcus and Aunt Victoria are having some problems. Adult problems. It's going to be hard for everyone for a while." "Is that why you were working so much lately?" Emma asked. She was so perceptive, so much like her father. "Yes," I admitted. "Uncle Marcus needed legal help, and I was helping him." Lucas, always more direct, asked, "Is Aunt Victoria mad at you?" "Very mad," I confirmed. "But sometimes doing the right thing makes people angry. That doesn't mean it wasn't right." As I drove away from that house, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Liberation. For so long, I had carried the weight of my family's judgment, their disappointment, their subtle and not so subtle messages that I was less than. I had internalized their narrative about who I was and what my life meant. But tonight, I had finally stood in my own truth. I had finally used the skills and strength I'd built to protect myself and my client. My phone started buzzing almost immediately with texts and calls. My mother, pleading with me to reconsider and make this right. My father, demanding I drop Marcus as a client. Extended family members who had heard bits and pieces and wanted details. I silenced the phone and focused on driving. Emma and Lucas were quiet in the back seat, processing what they'd witnessed without fully understanding it. When we got home, I made hot chocolate and we sat together in our modest living room with its comfortable furniture and family photos. "I know that was confusing," I told them. "But I want you both to understand something. Your father was real. He was so real and he loved you so much. Nothing anyone says can change that. And our family, the three of us, we're real too. We're just as valid and valuable as any other family." "Aunt Victoria said something mean, didn't she?" Emma asked. "At dinner. I could tell." "She did," I confirmed. "She said something hurtful about Dad and about our family. And I realized I was done letting people treat us that way." Lucas looked worried. "Are Grandma and Grandpa going to stop talking to us?" It was a fear I'd had too, the idea that standing up for myself might cost my children their relationship with their grandparents. But looking at them, I knew I'd made the right choice. They needed to see me stand up for us. They needed to know that our family had value regardless of what others thought. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But if they do, that's their choice, not ours. We'll still be okay. We have each other, and we have people who love us exactly as we are." After the kids went to bed, I finally allowed myself to process everything that had happened. The confrontation I'd been building toward for years. The satisfaction of watching Victoria's perfect facade crack. The professional pride in knowing I'd handled Marcus's case with skill and integrity. The relief of finally standing up for myself and my children. But there was also grief. Grief for the family relationships that might never recover. Grief for the childhood fantasy that one day my parents and sister would finally see me and value me. Grief for the years I'd spent trying to earn respect that should have been freely given. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the quiet darkness of my living room. My phone continued to buzz with messages I wasn't ready to read. Tomorrow would bring more confrontation, more anger, more complications. Victoria would hire an attorney, probably one of the expensive downtown firms. There would be a battle, maybe a lengthy and ugly one. My parents would likely take Victoria's side, as they always had. Extended family would gossip and take positions. The whole thing would be messy and painful. But tonight, in this moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. I felt free. Free from the need for their approval. Free from the burden of trying to fit into a role that was never meant for me. Free from the quiet desperation of hoping that this year, this holiday, this gathering would be different. I thought about Marcus, probably having a similar evening of difficult conversations and uncertain futures. He had taken a tremendous risk in filing for divorce, particularly from someone like Victoria who would not go quietly. But he had been brave enough to ask for help and strong enough to follow through. I was proud to represent him. My mind drifted to Daniel, as it often did in quiet moments. He had been gone for 8 years, but I still missed him. I wondered what he would think of the woman I'd become, the career I'd built, the way I'd raised our children alone. I hoped he would be proud. I thought he would be. The next morning came too soon. Emma and Lucas were subdued over breakfast, clearly still processing yesterday's events. I tried to keep things normal, making their favorite pancakes and letting them watch cartoons while I checked my phone. The messages were about what I expected. My mother's texts swung between pleading and accusatory. She wanted me to fix what I'd broken, to somehow undo the divorce filing and make everything go back to normal. My father's messages were shorter and angrier, demanding I call him immediately to explain myself. Victoria had sent a series of texts that progressed from rage to grief to threats. She was going to report me to the Bar Association. She was going to tell everyone what I'd done. She was going to make sure I regretted this. There were also messages from extended family members taking various positions. Some were appalled at what I'd done. Others were curious about the details. A few, surprisingly, were supportive, saying it was about time someone stood up to Victoria. The most unexpected message came from Marcus. He thanked me for yesterday, for having the courage to execute the plan we'd carefully constructed. He said Victoria had spent the night alternating between crying and yelling, insisting this was all a misunderstanding that could be fixed. He had moved into a hotel with some hastily packed belongings and was trying to figure out how to talk to Connor and Lily about what was happening. We scheduled a meeting for later in the week to discuss next steps and prepare for Victoria's inevitable counterattack. I also had a message from Patricia, my boss and mentor. She had heard through mutual legal contacts that I'd served divorce papers to my own sister on Christmas Day. She wanted to make sure I was okay and to remind me that our firm would support whatever decisions I made professionally. Her confidence in me meant more than she probably realized. By mid-morning, my mother called. I debated not answering, but I knew avoiding her would only make things worse. Her voice was strained when I picked up, thick with tears and exhaustion. "Caroline, we need to talk about what you've done," she began without preamble. "Your father and I are beside ourselves. How could you do this to Victoria? To our family?" "I represented a client who needed help," I replied calmly. "I did my job." "Your job? This isn't just a job. This is your sister's marriage. Your niece and nephew's family. You've destroyed everything." "Mom, I didn't destroy anything." Marcus was desperately unhappy. He came to me for help, and I provided it. "Would you rather he had suffered in silence indefinitely?" "I'd rather you had stayed out of it," she said sharply. "This isn't your business. Family doesn't do this to family. Family doesn't treat each other the way Victoria has treated me for my entire life," I countered. "Family doesn't say the things she said yesterday. But you never called her out for that, did you? You never once defended me or my children." There was silence on the other end. Finally, my mother said quietly, "Victoria was upset. She didn't mean what she said about Daniel. She absolutely meant it. And even if she hadn't, someone should have said something. You, Dad, Marcus, anyone. But you all just stood there. That's what always happens. Victoria gets to say whatever she wants, and I'm supposed to just take it. You're making this about you when it should be about saving Victoria's marriage," my mother protested. "Her marriage can't be saved. Marcus doesn't want to save it. He wants out. And he has every right to pursue that, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Your father wants to speak with you," she said abruptly, and before I could respond, my father's voice came on the line. "Caroline, this behavior is unacceptable," he stated in his authoritative tone. "You will drop Marcus as a client immediately and recommend he seek counseling with Victoria instead of pursuing divorce." "No," I said simply. "Excuse me?" "No, Dad. I won't drop Marcus as a client. I won't recommend counseling that he doesn't want. I'm going to do my job and represent him to the best of my ability." You don't get to dictate my professional decisions. I'm not dictating anything. I'm telling you what needs to happen to fix this disaster you've created. I didn't create this disaster. Victoria and Marcus did, over years of incompatibility and poor communication. I'm just helping Marcus navigate the legal process of ending it. You're helping destroy your sister's life out of spite, my father accused. Because you've always been jealous of her success. I'm not jealous of Victoria, I said, feeling surprisingly calm despite the accusation. I don't want her life. I never did. I just wanted to be treated with basic respect, and that was apparently too much to ask. Respect is earned, my father said coldly. And you've made choices that haven't exactly inspired it. Like what? Like marrying Daniel? Like raising 2 incredible children on my own after he died? Like going to law school while working full-time? Like building a successful career? What exactly about my choices doesn't deserve respect? My father didn't have an answer for that. After a long pause, he said, if you proceed with this divorce, don't expect to be welcome at family gatherings. You're making a choice, and choices have consequences. I understand, I replied. And I'm prepared to live with those consequences. Are you prepared to lose your relationship with Emma and Lucas because you're too proud to admit that Victoria isn't perfect? That's not fair, my mother's voice came from the background. Nothing about this family has ever been fair, Mom. That's the whole point. I ended the call feeling drained but resolute. They had made their position clear, and so had I. There would be no easy reconciliation, no quick fix to years of accumulated hurt and dysfunction. But I was finally standing in my truth, and that had to be enough. The following weeks were exactly as difficult as I'd anticipated. Victoria hired Theodore Whitmore, one of the most aggressive divorce attorneys in the state. He immediately filed motions challenging everything from the initial filing to my involvement as Marcus's attorney. We spent hours in depositions and hearings, with Victoria's team arguing that my personal relationship with her created a conflict of interest. But I had anticipated this strategy and prepared accordingly. Every communication between Marcus and me was documented and professional. Every decision was made with his best interests in mind, not any personal vendetta. The judge reviewing the case ultimately ruled that while the situation was unusual, there was no evidence of impropriety or conflict that would require me to withdraw. Victoria's legal strategy became increasingly desperate. She filed for exclusive custody of Connor and Lily, claiming Marcus was an unfit father. She disputed the valuation of assets, demanding significantly more than what was fair. She leaked details to mutual acquaintances, trying to paint Marcus as abandoning his family and me as a vindictive sister destroying her marriage out of jealousy. But Marcus and I had built a strong case. We had documentation of every shared decision, every instance of Victoria making major purchases without consultation, every text message showing her dismissiveness toward Marcus's feelings. We had witnesses who could testify to the power imbalance in their marriage. We had proof that Marcus had been an involved, loving father who deserved equal custody. 6 months into the divorce proceedings, Victoria's attorney suggested mediation. Theodore Whitmore had realized that going to trial would expose details his client didn't want made public. The judge strongly encouraged both parties to attempt settlement, and after careful discussion with Marcus, we agreed. The mediation took place over 3 grueling days. Victoria came in angry and defensive, still insisting that Marcus was making a mistake and that I had manipulated him. But as we worked through the financial details and custody arrangements, something shifted. Perhaps it was seeing everything laid out so clearly. Perhaps it was Theodore Whitmore's frank assessment of how a trial would likely go. Whatever the reason, Victoria gradually moved from fighting every point to actually negotiating. The final settlement gave Marcus everything he'd initially asked for. Joint custody with equal parenting time. Fair division of assets. Reasonable spousal support for a limited period while Victoria adjusted financially. The house would be sold and proceeds split. Marcus agreed to cover private school tuition for Connor and Lily through high school. It was, by any objective measure, an equitable outcome. When Victoria signed the settlement agreement, she looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Resentment, certainly. But maybe also a hint of something else. Respect, perhaps, or at least acknowledgement that I had done my job well. "You must be satisfied," she said quietly as we prepared to leave the conference room. "You finally beat me at something." "This was never about beating you," I replied. "This was about helping Marcus get free from a situation that was making him miserable. Just like I eventually got free from trying to earn approval I was never going to receive." "I never wanted you to feel that way," Victoria said, though her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced of her own words. "Maybe not consciously. But that was the effect of your actions. And I'm done waiting for you to see it." The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Marcus moved into a townhouse closer to the kids' school. Victoria stayed in a smaller house she purchased with her share of the settlement. Connor and Lily adjusted better than anyone expected, relieved that their parents' constant tension had finally ended. They split time between households and seemed genuinely happier with parents who were apart but cordial than they had been with parents who were together but miserable. My relationship with my parents never recovered, at least not in any meaningful way. They remained firmly on Victoria's side, viewing me as the person who had destroyed their daughter's perfect life. We maintained minimal contact for the sake of Emma and Lucas, but the warmth and connection were gone. Extended family members split along predictable lines, with most siding with Victoria and my parents. But I found I didn't miss it as much as I thought I would. The constant judgment, the comparisons, the subtle and not so subtle messages that I wasn't enough, letting go of all that created space for healthier relationships. Emma and Lucas had friends whose families embraced us fully. I had colleagues who valued my skills and character. Patricia became not just a mentor but a genuine friend who understood the complexity of my situation. Marcus and I maintained a professional relationship that gradually became a friendship. He started dating someone new, a teacher he met through Connor's school who treated him with kindness and respect. He thanked me regularly for giving him the courage to leave a marriage that had been slowly suffocating him. 2 years after that Christmas dinner, I received an unexpected email from Victoria. It was brief and awkward, but it was something. She had been in therapy, working through her own issues around perfectionism and control. She was slowly recognizing patterns in her behavior that had damaged her relationships. She wasn't ready to fully acknowledge her role in our family dynamic, but she was beginning to see it. She asked if we could meet for coffee sometime, not to rehash the past but to see if there was any possibility of building something different moving forward. I didn't respond immediately. I sat with the email for several days, discussing it with my therapist and trusted friends. Eventually, I agreed to meet, but with clear boundaries and realistic expectations. Some relationships can be repaired. Others can only be redefined. And some need to remain at a distance for everyone's well-being. That Christmas dinner where Victoria delivered her cruelest blow and I responded with the truth of Marcus's divorce filing changed everything. It ended one chapter of my life and began another. I learned that standing up for yourself isn't cruel or vindictive, it's necessary. I learned that doing your job with integrity and skill isn't betrayal, even when it makes people you love uncomfortable. Most importantly, I learned that seeking validation from people who are determined not to give it is a losing game, and the only approval that truly matters is your own. Emma is now 16, confident and bright, planning to study engineering in college. Lucas is 14, creative and kind, talking about becoming an architect. They've grown up watching their mother build a career she's proud of while maintaining her values and dignity. That's the real empire I created, not wealth or status, but a foundation of self-respect that I can pass on to them. And it all started the moment I stopped shrinking to fit into spaces that were never meant for me. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.